Welcome to the Battle of Ohio podcast, where we follow the revival of the historic rivalry between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns.
This is episode 26 of the Battle of Ohio podcast. The regular season's in the past now, and we're moving to the playoffs. For the Browns, anyway. They'll be playing against Pittsburgh in the first round of the playoffs. The Bengals, on the other hand, are looking forward to an offseason of continuing the same rebuild that we've been seeing since arguably about 2017. So a sense of optimism is kind of hard to come by in the Queen City these days. But we all know that the Steelers still suck.
The Steelers still suck, and so do the Cleveland Indians owners who don't want to spend any money on any players. So
that
cheap.
Sounds familiar.
I actually made a TikTok. That I put on Twitter, and I just took down from Twitter because I was like, that's too much. Where I'm singing a song and dancing about how the owners of the Cleveland Indians are cheap.
That's wow.
It was really funny, actually. I just took it down because I don't know. I might put it back.
For the fact that the Bengals owners actually were better about that last offseason, I might consider doing something like that myself, but for the Bengals. Also, maybe not on TikTok. I don't really do TikTok. So, anyway, Thomas, why don't you tell me what you're drinking today?
Today, I am drinking a strawberry margarita. Yes, That's right. My friend, from Hornitos Vodka. Yep, and it's some good stuff. It was made by my friend. Yeah. Ooh.
I was half expecting you to say you were going to be drinking a Bud Light Orange.
It's funny.
What?
I was like about an hour and a half ago, I was drinking a Bud Light Orange. In fact, I was either bringing a Bud Light Orange or a Twisted Tea on the show. I was like, nah, I'm just overplaying that too much. So.
I think Bud Light Orange in general seems to be your default. So it's just like if you bring it on, then I don't think it's even really surprising at this point.
I at least want to be
the first time it was like, oh come on, Bud Light, really? But then again, that was also the first episode, so.
Hey man, Bud Light's been good for Browns fans.
Yeah,
I got to shake this up so I can mix it.
I don't know if it was necessarily good. Y'all got free Bud Light, but it was under very unfortunate circumstances.
That was one of the top 5 funnest nights of my life, by the way. Just want to say that.
Oh yeah. Well, at least you had that.
It was a good night.
At least you had that. Me, I'm drinking yet another. I'm finding a bunch of new beers at Jungle Gyms, which I guess is to be expected. It's Jungle Gyms. But I found a gold mine as far as new beers is considered. And this one's called Andy Gator.
Andy Gator? Okay.
Design. What'd you say?
I actually never heard of that one. Usually I heard of beers.
It's a Hell's Doppelbock or Doppelbock.
Okay.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
Andy Gator is a fearsome beast. Don't let his toothy grin, slightly sweet flavor, and subtle fruit aroma fool you. This cold-blooded creature is a Hell's Doppelbock that can sneak up on you. This unique high-gravity brew is made with pale malt, German lager yeast, and German pearl hops. Sip, don't gulp, and taste the wild of Abita Andy Gator. Okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
All that.
It's okay.
All that like suspense and build up like from that like epic thing they wrote on the bottle, and it's like it's okay.
It's okay.
I mean, it is. It's okay. It's not great. I don't know if I taste any fruit though. I mean, they said taste the subtle fruit aroma and the slightly sweet flavor. I'm not getting either of those. Okay, maybe. Okay, I can. There's a little bit of a sweet flavor. It's very, very. They're right. It is subtle. It's very subtle. But fruit, no, there's no fruit in there. Which good. I don't like fruity beer.
Yeah, F your fruit. No, I don't know. I've been drinking myself.
Fuck you, Bud Light Orange.
Shut up.
I'm
That beer got me through the
I
pandemic.
had Bud Light Lime, and that just tasted like Bud Light to me. I didn't even really taste the lime.
Bud Light Orange helped me get through the pandemic, man.
That's good.
I mean, we're still in it.
But anyway, this is a football podcast, not a beer podcast. So
Yep.
let's go ahead and talk about these teams. We can start by talking about the Bengals, and obviously there's no game to talk about. So let's just talk about the Bengals going into the offseason, what we're doing. What we're doing right now is we're firing coaches. Not enough, though. Like, I mean, we kept Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator, which I don't understand at all. His defense was one of the worst defenses I've ever seen in Cincinnati in my life. And to the best of my knowledge, might also be one of the worst defenses we've seen in Cincinnati at all. But I don't know. I guess maybe they saw something here or there. Maybe they wanted continuity. Maybe he made a good pitch. I don't know what happened, but Lou Anarumo's coming back. But we got wide receiver coach Bob Bicknell, defensive line coach Nick Eason, running backs coach Jamal Singleton, who actually got hired by the University of Kentucky, so he's just moving to a different job. And then most importantly, offensive line coach Jim fucking Turner is out of here.
You know, that's probably one of the most underrated coaching positions in football.
Well, especially when you've got Jim Turner, who's like he was the guy who like got caught up in like, you remember that whole like Bullygate thing from Miami? Like what's his name? Richie Incognito was getting bullied, or maybe
yeah. I remember that.
Or he was doing the bullying. I forget which one. I think he was doing the bullying to Jonathan Martin.
And Incognito was the bully. I remember that.
Yeah, and that all happened under Jim Turner's watch in Miami.
They're like, man, those players are soft, but he's like saying like these like extreme, like, come on, man.
Yeah, but at the same time, some of the stuff they said they were doing is just kind of like, all right, come on.
No,
supposed to be professionals here, right? Like, I'm not really super like empathetic or sympathetic, rather, maybe a little empathetic, but I'm not really sympathetic toward like the whole bullying thing when it comes to like grown football players. Like, it's just kind of like, I'll get over it. It's football, bullying happens. But at the same time, it's also fostering kind of a toxic locker room kind of environment. And I wouldn't so much be like outraged as like an average NFL fan at the bullying happening. Although maybe it was really, really bad and we just don't know at that point, fuck Richie Incognito.
No.
But outside of that, from like if I was a Miami Dolphins fan, I'd be really not happy to hear that that's happening, because that destroys your locker room.
No, but the bullying thing needs to stop. I'm not defending bullying. I'm saying that, like you said, there's probably like small bullying that goes on in locker rooms, but I'm learning my words. Why you shouldn't drink before you go on podcasts. Incognito, he what he did, if memory serves me correctly, he was actually very ambitious with his bullying, which just doesn't make sense for a grown man, and to be an offensive line coach to let that happen, it speaks volumes on you.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought process. Like, the complete and utter lack of control is what I take from that. And it's like, like I said, I'm not going to speak too much about, like, I mean, obviously like if it's a significant enough amount of bullying, then like I said, fuck Richie Incognito. But I mean, beyond that, I'm not really going to take too much of a moral outrage about it. But I will say the fact that Jim Turner let that happen in his locker room is like, and it got to that point, is ridiculous. And we saw similar things happening in Cincinnati. We didn't see Bullygate or anything like that, but we saw Jim Turner acting like a fucking drill sergeant all the time. And it really, you can do that with college players, but you can't really act like that with NFL players to that extent. Because I mean, think about it from I actually heard this. Somebody was talking about this on a podcast I was listening to this morning. So I'm not saying this idea is completely coming from my own head. I don't want to like steal somebody else's idea and take credit for it. But I think it might have been Tom Grossi. I'm not sure. No, it probably wasn't. Anyway, NFL having an for like NFL starters, guys getting paid. So some of these guys getting paid, like tens of millions of dollars per year, getting barked at by a offensive line coach in the NFL who's like probably I actually don't know what they make.
I don't know either, but I can tell you that I already think an offensive line coach is probably a more important position. Probably one of the more important coaching positions. Let's see, offense coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams, and probably the offensive line coach. Probably I put in that order.
So, according to USA Today, offensive line coaches make about $500,000 per year, which to me is my God, that's a lot of money. But to I don't know, like even Michael Jordan, like I mean he's still on his rookie contract, and he probably got barked at a lot by Jim Turner, and he's not any good. He doesn't have anything to back up, but he's making a lot more than Jim Turner's making. Think about it from like the perspective of somebody like Bobby Hart. Well, maybe not Bobby Hart, because Bobby Hart, like Jim Turner fought on Bobby Hart's corner quite a bit. So I don't know. The Bengals don't really have any highly paid offensive linemen outside of Bobby Hart, and there's probably a good reason for that. But my point being that some of these offensive linemen are making a substantial amount of money, and to have somebody who's making a fraction of what you're making come up and try to bark orders to you just seems ridiculous. Trey Hopkins, by the way, the center, he signed a $20 million contract for 3 years. So on average, he's making about $6.8 million per year. So can you imagine you're making $6.8 million per year, and somebody who's making like half of 1 million comes up to you and starts trying to bark at you and call you a piece of shit for doing something wrong or whatever? Like, that drill sergeant thing ain't going to work like you think it's going to work in the NFL. We saw Bill O'Brien try to do that, and look how that blew up in his face. So, I don't know. I never liked Jim Turner. When I found out we were hiring him, I was pretty pissed, especially when there were also rumors that we were going to sign Bill Callahan. And, look what he's done up there in Cleveland. But no, we had to go get Jim Turner. So,
I want the guy who allowed bullying in the locker room.
There's I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the other position coaches, because nobody really cares about the other position coaches. I mean, we want them to hire a good wide receiver coach. We want them to hire a good defensive line coach. We want them to hire a good running back coach. But at the same time, nobody's really paying attention to that one quite like they're paying attention to the offensive line coach, just because there's been so much hullabaloo kind of surrounding the relationship with Zach Taylor and Jim Turner, and the relationship with Jim Turner and his offensive line, and also the actual results of Jim Turner's offensive line. And so there has been more talk than you would normally expect about who's going to potentially replace this offensive line coach for the Bengals. And the main three names that I've heard so far, James Rapien from Sports Illustrated. You Browns fans are probably familiar with him for his brief work as covering the Browns, but he's back covering the Bengals now, and he reported that the former Lions offensive line coach, Hank Fraley, who he didn't get fired for having a bad offensive line. He's just, the Jim Caldwell got fired in Detroit, and typically when that happens, you have a big exodus of all the assistants and stuff like that. And Hank Fraley put together a pretty good offensive line. He actually, in 2017, I believe, he was the one who picked Frank Ragnow in the draft, and that was who the Bengals were going to take, and we ended up taking Billy Price instead, and that didn't work. The other names that I've heard are two guys that you'll be actually pretty familiar with, Thomas. One of which is, now this one isn't really substantiated at all. This is really just, I think, Bengals fans kind of, being desperate and wanting something to happen, but I think it's actually pretty unlikely to happen, is Bill Callahan, who is actually the father of our offensive coordinator. So that's why there was, that's a big reason why a lot of people were thinking the Bengals might hire him last year as the offensive line coach. Or I guess 2 years ago now as the offensive line coach. And the only thing about that is for that even to be allowed to happen, because I assume he's probably got another year, maybe 2 left on his contract with the Browns. For that to even be allowed to happen, the Bengals would have to give him a promotion, and it's not like they're going to fire Brian Callahan to sign Bill Callahan. That'd be ridiculous. I mean, you could maybe come up with some sort of position for him, but it just seems like a lot of trying to scurry around to, make a big deal about signing an offensive line coach. It just doesn't seem likely to me that something like that would happen.
Yeah, it does seem. It's funny here. What if you what if I wonder how well the it's just a random thought. It's just a random Cleveland thought. I wonder how well of a coach Joe Thomas would be for offensive lineman.
I think
that's just a random thought. I
think he could be a good offensive line coach. I don't think he wants to be an offensive line coach.
Oh no, I don't think he wants to be. I think he wants to do broadcast.
Well, I think he wants to do broadcasting. I think he wants to be a personality, and I think also you saw how much weight he lost after he after he retired. I don't think he wants anything to do with football anymore. I mean, beyond just being a football fan or something.
I was listening to him. He was on the radio station, the sports talk radio station in Cleveland after the Browns drafted Jedrick Wills, and he talked about why it was beneficial. He talked about his footwork and mechanics, and he broke it down, and he did a good job. It's kind of like the difference between a good teacher and a bad teacher. A bad teacher, every teacher knows the material, obviously, but a good teacher is able to dumb down the material to make it, to explain it to people who never been involved in the material before, right? So you can teach history, right? But how you going to teach history? You're going to teach history like you talking to another history nerd, or you're going to teach history like you're talking to somebody who never experienced, who don't know anything about history. And that makes people want to learn more because you dumb it down to them so they can understand it. And I know that sounds like elementary, or I know that sounds like weird, but that's pretty much what you got to do when you're a coach, when you're trying to teach players new things and things, how to improve or how to improve certain elements of their game. They're going to be more willing to listen to you if you're able to dumb it down, because it makes it seem achievable. So which means that you're able to speak their language, you're able to teach them more, and you're able to explain things to them better. I think Joe Thomas did that very well to me. And I never even played offensive line in football. I never even thought about it. I played defense most of the time I played football.
Yeah.
And he taught me some things about footwork, handwork, all this other stuff. Every single time I hear him talk about playing offensive line, he's very insightful. And he's if you want to learn how to play offensive line, just listen to one of Joe Thomas' interview. That's for you, Pee Wee football players who probably never watched this podcast. This is for you, Pee Wee football players. We get everybody on the podcast.
I always played. When I was really little, I played linebacker, but for the most part, I played cornerback and wide receiver. So I almost have the whole concept of even how to play offensive line is almost foreign to me. When honestly, I'm probably one of the last people to really know what I'm talking about when it comes to the stances that offensive linemen got to get into, and how to use your hands, how to punch, how to get around and stuff like that. I can tell you what's generally good to look for in an offensive line prospect, but outside of that, that's I'm more knowledgeable about obviously speed, technique, catching with your hands as opposed to blocking with your hands and stuff like that. I never really was a blocker of any sort. But anyway, that's the third name that I've heard brought up as a potential replacement for Jim Turner is actually another offensive line coach currently in Cleveland. Is actually Bill Callahan's assistant offensive line coach, Scott Peters. I've heard a lot of people attributing the success of the Browns' offensive line partially to Bill Callahan. He's always been a great offensive line coach, but I've also heard a lot of people talking about Scott Peters, and he's actually one of those guys who you were talking about how Joe Thomas is really good at breaking down and explaining handwork and technique and stuff like that to somebody who may not even be really somebody who may not have a lot of experience with offensive line or even maybe football in the first place. Although I will say, for what that's worth, that's really a great trait of a TV analyst or somebody trying to teach I think it's great that he has that ability to break stuff like that down for dumb it down to people, stuff like that. But you don't really need to do that when you're talking to offensive line prospects or professionals who've been in the game for 10 years. It's not you don't really need to explain individual aspects of technique on the lowest common denominator type level.
I know, obviously.
But what I've heard about Scott Peters is that he's got a bunch of videos up on YouTube of MMA technique and stuff like that. And some he's really, really, really good at the technical side of offensive line play, which is one thing that the Bengals could use a lot of help with, just an insane amount of help with.
Yeah,
are you familiar at all with Scott Peters, Thomas?
A little, a little. I'm not too well. I'm pretty well versed with the Browns coaches, obviously, for this podcast, but not as much as you are. Obviously, you obviously know more about them than I do right now. Well, kind of embarrassing.
I'll actually be honest with you. Those Bill Callahan and Scott Peters are probably, other than Kevin Stefanski, those are probably the only two coaches I could name right now. And the only reason I can name those two is because I'm looking for a new offensive line coach for the Bengals. So I mean, don't think I could tell you who your running backs coach is or anything like that.
Yeah, so trust me, we're gonna get a heavy dosage of Alex Van Pelt when it's my turn to talk about the Browns.
All right, I know. Alex Van Pelt. I know all about him because he used to be the Bengals quarterback coach.
So I'm pretty excited to talk about him.
Yeah. Well, we will get onto the Browns here in a little bit, but one last thing I wanted to talk about with the Bengals is 2021 is probably going to be Zach Taylor's last opportunity to show something. Basically, pretty much everybody within the Bengals organization, and a lot of Bengals fans, obviously not all Bengals fans, but a lot of people basically consider 2019 that was a wash. Okay, they were just completely hitting the reset button on the roster. There was a lot of turmoil. There was a lot of turnover. The fact that they had a horrible season last year, that one's just kind of like water under the bridge. It's okay, whatever. We saw a couple of good things here and there. 2020. A lot of people feel like there wasn't really enough progress shown to really get you excited about this guy's future. And I feel the same way. Now, I didn't feel like we should fire him because I feel like there was some progress enough to warrant maybe a final look in 2021 and see, hey, does this guy have what it takes to lead this team to doing something? And if so, you better show it in 2021 because you didn't really show it much in 2020. It really kind of looked like a slightly better version of what we saw in 2019. So,
yeah.
What the Bengals have a lot to fix. So I don't know if we're going to be Super Bowl contenders, in the next 2 or 3 years. But I mean, there's so much that needs to be fixed. I think we could potentially be, if we fix enough things and get enough things kind of going in the right direction. I do think that this is a team that could potentially fight for a playoff spot next year, kind of like what the Dolphins did. They were right in the playoff mix up until the very, very end. I'm thinking that the Bengals could potentially be right there next year if they go and do the right things this offseason. Now, everything you need to fix the offensive line. you can't get away with anything close to what we've been seeing the last 2 years on offensive line. You've got to fix the defensive line because, I mean, like there's a little bit there. There's more, I think, on defensive line than there is on offensive line. But, this Bengals team over, like that 5-year run where we made the playoffs 5 years in a row and we were looking like one of the better teams in the NFL for a while. A lot of that was predicated on the fact that we had a devastating defensive line. We had Carlos Dunlap, we had Michael Johnson, we had, Geno Atkins looking like Geno Atkins. Our pass rush. I mean, we had Vontaze Burfict, linebacker who was, really good at pass rushing. Our pass rush was really what we always had our secondary was always kind of up and down. Our linebackers were always awful at pass coverage. They tended to be, kind of up and down in the run game, but they were awful in pass coverage. But what really kind of was a Band-Aid that kind of like glossed over all those issues was the pass rush. And it's like if the quarterback can't get the ball out of his hands and get sacked all the damn time, it doesn't matter how bad your secondary is. But you don't even have that now. This defense is in an absolutely awful position. And I still think that offensive line needs a little bit more help. So I think, you spend that high first-round pick on an offensive lineman. But I think defensive line needs to be your second pick.
Who are some cornerstones that you could look at on your defense, possibly, that you want to keep long-term?
Well, obviously Jesse Bates.
Okay.
Yeah, you got Jesse Bates, who might be – he got snubbed for the Pro Bowl, which I think is ridiculous. But Jesse Bates might be the best young safety in the NFL today, and definitely a top 5 safety in general in the NFL today. You got Carl Lawson, who's a pretty good pass rusher. Problem is, he's literally the only one on the Bengals defensive line who can pass rush at all. And even then, he's kind of inconsistent sometimes. But if you can re-sign him, then that's something you don't have to fix. I mean, that's something you need to build around him, but you don't need to fix Carl Lawson. I think Logan Wilson, the linebacker we drafted in the 3rd round last year or this year or whatever, the 2020 draft. I feel like Logan Wilson wasn't perfect, but I think he did pretty well. And Jermaine Pratt, I think, he's not going to be a game wrecker or anything like that, but I think he's shown some decent progress after we drafted him a couple of years ago. I think our linebackers look a lot better than they did last year, and part of that is because you brought in Logan Wilson and you brought in Josh Bynes as a kind of like potential backup type thing. But I think, like I said, I think Jesse Bates, Carl Lawson, Logan Wilson, those are the 3 main ones. And you could maybe throw William Jackson III in there, our cornerback, but he kind of had a down year this year, and he's been kind of up and down throughout his career here anyway, and he's coming up on the end of his contract, so I'm not even sure if we're going to re-sign him.
Yeah.
I think they'd love to re-sign him, but they probably won't want to re-sign him for the price he's going to command.
Yeah. Okay. I still think y'all still won the offseason away. If I'm the Bengals, the first thing I'll do, honestly, like you said, is shore up the offensive line. The offensive line should be the first thing you shore up. Especially as nobody's going to have the image of Joe Burrow and getting just annihilated out of their head, even though that wasn't really the worst thing the offensive line did. It's just something that everybody's always going to point to.
Well, that was definitely the worst thing that happened all season. It was kind of a little bit of a freak accident, but at the same time, if Michael Jordan hadn't just gotten desperately overpowered the way he did, then that probably wouldn't have happened the way it did.
Exactly. So just the imagery of the offensive line and just like the reputation of the offensive line, like you guys probably do whatever I can to just remove every single person on the offensive line and build somebody new.
Well, except Jonah Williams. I think Jonah Williams is good enough. And also Trey Hopkins, Although we're not going to have him at the beginning of the season because he tore his ACL against the Ravens.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and then I probably after I show the offensive line, you guys have offensive playmakers, so you don't need that. So I wouldn't worry about that. I'll probably just get that defense though is a problem. I think your offense is. I think y'all got a playoff offense though. Y'all fixed the offensive line. I think y'all have a playoff offense.
Well, I will
I think
say
I have
that
a really good offense.
the offense isn't
Yeah.
perfect right now. Like we do one position we're going to need wide receiver because AJ Green is not going to be back. But
But you got
here's
T.
the thing,
Higgins and Tyler Boyd though.
I know
I mean,
that's what I'm
y'all
saying.
don't need
We
somebody
don't
phenomenal. Y'all just need some
need
good
a
receivers.
lot of people are talking about like, hey, if Jamar Chase is on the board, then go take him. And I'm sitting here like, why? Like we don't need Jamar Chase. We got T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Hell, we got Auden Tate, who didn't finish the season this year, but I mean he's a solid, I think, number 4 receiver. I think maybe we could stand to go get like a number 3 receiver, but I mean, even then, I think the Bengals have a lot of. I think the Bengals have a lot of talent in their wide receiver room that it doesn't get enough credit. But I do think we need to take a wide receiver, but I don't think we really need to do it until probably like the 5th or 6th round. To be honest with you, and I think we need to focus more so on somebody who's going to be a good special teams contributor, who can also, who's also a good. A good like a good in the passing game. Because I'll be honest, I'm not sure if Alex Erickson is going to be back long term. But I think one guy in particular in the draft who I think the Bengals should go get, because you could probably get him in the 5th, maybe the 6th round if you push it, is what's his name? Ikemir Smith Marset out of Iowa. I think Iowa. Yeah, out of Iowa. He's kind of like, he kind of reminds me of like that AJ Green type build, and he's kind of he's kind of a good possession receiver who can also kind of go do things afterwards. But I mean, he's mainly like, a big body guy who can go get the ball on top of you. But in particular, his biggest asset is how explosive he can be with the ball in his hands and in space. Kind of like AJ Green, except he's also got like kick and punt return experience. So, that's another element you can add to the team at a position that, the Bengals are kind of floundering at right now.
Yeah. Man.
But I don't think you need to go get Jamar Chase or, Jalen Waddle, or like, if one of those guys falls in your lap, then I guess whatever. But I don't think we need to be taking them at 5th overall.
Man, I'm gonna go to the Browns COVID list, man. Sorry, just make sure that it's not trending and they got somebody else on COVID.
Yep.
So freaking annoying. But yeah, no, I mean, sorry about the Bengals. I think the best option for defense. I think the best thing for defense though is always built through the draft. I think defensive players. I think the 2nd and 3rd round, and mainly 4th round, is always a hot spot for cornerstone players on defense. You think of the Khalil Macks of the world. You think of even TJ Ward, who was taken actually in the 2nd round, but there's so many times that you can find players that can fill in holes in your defense through the 2nd and 3rd round. Now, obviously, that first overall pick is going to be offensive lineman. You float the idea of the Bengals trading down. I said that I like the idea because you have 7 offensive linemen that are projected to be taken in the 1st round. So if you trade down, get a second 1st round pick and possibly another 2nd or 3rd round pick, then you can use that to get 2 offensive linemen and a defensive player plus on top of the pick that you already have. I think that the Bengals should I think the Bengals should aim to draft 10 players in this draft. 7 in the rounds between. The Bengals should have the Bengals should try their best to have 7 picks within the first 5 rounds of the draft, because you could get in the first 2 rounds. Obviously, you get the players that you want as cornerstones, right? But that third through 5th round is a way for you to beef your defense. Those picks aren't really that hard to get. They're difficult to get, but they're not hard to get. And I think that the Bengals should do whatever they can to trade and get as many young blue chippers as they can in those rounds, so they could stabilize their defense, because their defense needs a lot of help. And I think that bringing in veterans is not really. Excuse me. I think bringing in veterans is not really a. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you're on the stage of the rebuild is just bring in these veterans who are going to be disinterested, who's just going to collect checks.
I kind of disagree with you, sort of. I do think that we need to go spend a high pick on offensive line, but I think this offensive line is in such a drastically terrible state that it's going to require both. Like, I think the number 5 overall.
No, for the offensive line, yes. Not for the defense. No, for the offensive line, I think I need to get a veteran for the offensive line. I'm talking about defense player. I don't think I should get a defense player. I don't think I should go out and draft a veteran defense player. I think I should draft a veteran.
Well,
grab a veteran.
I'm not entirely sure we need to. Maybe we could stand to go get like a veteran pass rusher. That wouldn't be a terrible idea in my opinion. But outside of that, I don't think we need to go make a big splash in veteran free agency on defense. Because I mean, don't forget we did that last year, and a bunch of those guys got hurt, so they'll be coming back next year. Trey Waynes, I mean, he's not like big giant splash as far as talent's concerned, but he'll be probably the number 1 cornerback. He'll be a solid addition, I think, to a secondary that desperately needs some better cornerback play. You got DJ Reader coming back, who we did get to see for part of this year, and he was looking really good. So he'll be coming back, and Geno Atkins will be gone, but that might actually be kind of a good thing because he wasn't doing all that good. We are going to still have Mike Daniels, who was a Pro defensive tackle with the Green Bay Packers for a couple of years, and he was also with the Lions. I can't remember if he made a Pro Bowl there or not. But point being that we've got a lot of – we already went out and spent a ton of money on the defense. And so, like, if we do go get if we do spend money on defense, it's like a cornerback, maybe. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, even then, that's kind of ridiculous when we already, spent money on Trey Waynes last year. But like a defensive end, sure. Like, I mean, if they want to go out and sign Bud Dupree, who I'm not even sure if he's going to make it to free agency, but if he does for whatever reason, then maybe you go sign Bud Dupree. But even then, like, I don't know. If you don't re-sign Carl Lawson, I think you do need to go get a veteran defensive end in free agency. But if you do re-sign Carl Lawson, you can probably afford to just wait till the draft for that. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal to spend money on free agents on the defense. Now, if you do, sure, why the hell not? I mean, maybe bring in Patrick Peterson. That'd be awesome. It's not going to happen, but that'd be awesome.
God, I'm just looking at it. I'm just reading these transcripts from the interview of Mike Tomlin, and
Well, don't worry. We'll be talking about that here pretty soon.
I freaking hate the Steelers so much.
Actually, on that note, I think we've probably talked enough about the Bengals. It's this is a Bengals Brown podcast, so we do need to talk about the Bengals. However, it's mostly just depressing off-season stuff that we've got like 6 months to talk about that, so we don't need to cram it all in right now. Let's go ahead and talk about the Browns because they got a playoff game coming up.
If we have any players left.
Well, no. But I have one thought about that. When I heard Kevin Stefanski was going to be out with COVID, it made me think, I don't know if I believe in the Browns to win this game without Kevin Stefanski. Now, I do really like Alex Van Pelt, but he's never really called plays before, so Or no, has he been your offensive coordinator?
He's been offensive coordinator the whole season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, I think the plays.
But he's never really managed the whole team before. So I mean, starting immediately in one of your toughest games of the entire season, this is the first time you've ever been like a head coach of any type. That's pretty difficult. I would love to see the Browns win this game because fuck the Steelers. It's looking pretty suspect though with all these COVID issues and everything. But I will say, and I'll let you talk here in a second because you're the Browns fan and this is your subject to talk about. But one thing I want to say is, if the Browns don't win this game, it's okay. It's fine. Okay, don't. I mean, obviously, you guys want to win. I'm not saying you guys wouldn't be disappointed or anything like that, and you'd be totally in your right to be disappointed. But what I'm saying is, if you don't win, just enjoy the fact that you guys are in the playoffs, right? Like, it's been 18 years since the Browns have gotten to enjoy a playoff game of any kind whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So just be happy about that. Like, enjoy the fact that you have a playoff game to look forward to. Next year, you can worry about, like, oh, we better win the first round of playoffs, and if we don't, there's going to be hell to pay. But, like, this year, just try not to focus too much on what actually happens. Just try to take in the moment, soak it in, enjoy the fact that you're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And if COVID ruins it for you guys, at least you made the playoffs.
You're talking to the wrong Browns fan for that, man. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's not. I'm never gonna think like that.
Okay.
Mainly because I don't have a loser mentality. So let me go through the list of players who are currently on the Browns COVID list: B.J. Goodson, Michael Smith, Andrew Sanjeo, Harrison Bryant, Denzel Ward, Kevin Johnson, Joe Batonio, Jarvis Peterson, Cordero Hodges, Bill Callen, Chad O'Shara, Jeff Howard, Drew Porzingis, Kevin Stefanski, and now Rodney Harris. Now, yes.
That's a lot of good players.
Yeah. Only two of the players that are on the COVID list are on offense. Is our offensive lineman Joe Batonio, who is actually pretty important because you don't want to lose on your offensive lineman, and Cordero Hodges, who's one of our receivers. On defense, Denzel Ward, Kevin Johnson. In fact, no, okay. Yeah, Denzel Ward, Kevin Johnson. Oh, Harrison Bryant should be back. Denzel Ward, Kevin Johnson, Andrew Sejehu, Malcolm Smith, and B.J. Goodson should all be off the list by Sunday. So that's the good news. So instead of having 7 starters out, we'll probably have more like 2 or 3 starters out. We do have the Achilles injury from what's his name? Olivia Vernon. So our defense is going to take a hit, but it's also worth noting that Greedy Williams will be back. So the Browns secondary. So last week the Browns had Terrence Mitchell being the starting cornerback for the Browns, and now he's the number 1 corner for the Browns. And we had 3 practice squad receivers or cornerbacks. And people were like, "Oh, how does Mason Rudolph have 300 yards against the Browns?" Well, he was playing against practice squad receivers or cornerbacks, and he had his number 1 receivers out there. What Mason Rudolph pretty much did last week was throw the ball up and see if his receivers could catch it. Pretty much what he did. If the Browns had their complete secondary out there, he wouldn't be able to do that. Now, we did lose Rodney Harris, but we are getting Denzel Ward back. We are getting Kevin Johnson back. And we're getting Sanjehu back. Sanjehu, I know, he's, Sanjehu, but, we need him back. We need B.J. Goodson back. We need all those players, Michael Smith back. We need all those players back on defense. In terms of offense, though, I don't expect his offense to miss a beat. And his offense shouldn't miss a beat. I know the Steelers defense have this renowned defense, but I don't think the Browns offense, you still got Baker Mayfield, you still got Jarvis Landry, you still got 90% of your offensive line, you still have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and Alex Van Pelt. He won't be he's just the offensive coordinator this game. He just calling plays. The person who's overseeing the team is going to be the special team coordinator. So the offense shouldn't miss a beat. the most important part of a head coach is the game plan for me. Also the execution on game day, but game planning is one of the most important things about a head coach. Kevin Stefanski's still going to write the game plan. They're still going to have the game plan prepared, and they've been prepared for if this were to happen since the beginning of the season. Because at the beginning of the season, you had multiple players test positive for COVID, falsely test positive for COVID, and one of those people who falsely test positive was Kevin Stefanski, and they had the prestige coordinator run through plays and run the offense, and he was preparing to coach that week 1 game. So the Browns aren't unfamiliar with the situation. They are very familiar with the situation. They've had a contingency plan. With that said, that Browns offense should be fine. The Browns defense was never the right home anyway, but you still have your 2 best stars on defense, Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett. So there's still no excuses this game. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, y'all got players who have COVID, so who cares? Y'all got to tough it up, get up there and win. Y'all still got a game to play on Sunday Night Football. Y'all better go out there and win this game. I don't care what anybody to say. I don't care what you got to say, Kyle. I don't care what the national media has to say. I don't care what my own fans has to say. You are a paid professional. You still going to have, at the end of the day, by the time game time starts on Sunday, you're going to have 2 starters missing. You should win that game on Sunday. You should do whatever you can to win that game on Sunday, because here's the facts. The facts of the matter is this. The Steelers are coming into this game losing 4 out of the last 5 games.
That's true.
The Browns won 3 out of the last 5. And you can point to the Jets game, the Browns lost, where they had to wake up they're playing, they don't leave till 12 a.m. in the morning, all that other good stuff. But even still, we throw all that out of the window because the Steelers had to deal with COVID issues too. Maybe not as severe as the Browns did, but the Steelers had to deal with it too. And the Steelers lost 4 out of the last 5. The thing is that the Steelers did not just lose 4 out of the last 5. The Steelers lost to Cincinnati team when they weren't on short rest. They had 8 days to prepare for Cincinnati between their games. They lost to Washington football team. They did play them on short rest, but they lost to the Washington football team, who was technically a playoff team, but still, they lost. They got blown out by the Bills.
Technically.
And they lost to the Browns. Now, of course, the rest of their starters against the Browns, but the reason why the rest of their starters is because, quite frankly, they're old. And Ben Roethlisberger's thrown the second most amount of passes that he has in his entire career after on an injured repaired elbow. Now, one thing that this team does a great job of, one thing the coaching staff does a great job of, they do a great job of game planning. If you look at what they did in the Tennessee game, the Browns held Derrick Henry to less than 50 yards in rushing. Derrick Henry, dude. Now you're telling me that they can't find a way to stop Ben Roethlisberger, who has surgery repaired elbow. So the whole thing is to find ways to get pressure onto Ben Roethlisberger. Now that's gonna be hard without Olivia Vernon, but you still have BJ Goodson, you still have a lot of players who should be able to rush the quarterback and apply pressure to Ben Roethlisberger. And this team lost 4 of the last 5. And if you say, all right, well, one of the games they rest of starters. Well, this team still lost three of the last 4 games of the season. And they barely beat a Colts team who the Browns handled. You got the offense to beat this team. You should be able to outshoot them. If the Bengals could do it, you should be able to do it too. Plus, Steelers don't have no fans. It's a neutral site virtually. Go up there, rock the Steelers, bring home the W.
You know,
that's how I feel about it.
For what it's worth, the Bengals absolutely did not out-offense the Steelers. I mean, they did. They won. But we did it with, I think we had like 16 points. It's not like – I'm not saying that the Browns aren't going to do that. I'm saying the Bengals out-offense the Steelers. That's not what happened. We just shut down their offense.
Well, I know. What I'm saying is if y'all could do that with Ryan Finley. And here's the other thing, though. And here's the other reason. Here's the biggest reason why I think that the Steelers are going to lose. And I know I kind of tipped my hand for the predictions episode. Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, they're not respecting their opponent. And by that, I mean, I hear this a lot from Baker Mayfield here. In fact, I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they was telling me why they think that the Browns should, if Justin Fields fall in the draft, the Browns should trade up and draft Justin Fields. It's like, wait, you got Baker Mayfield. This is how little people respect Baker Mayfield. Mike Tomlin is another person who don't really respect Baker Mayfield for who he is. And you guys are get on social media and say all this negative stuff. Don't put your foot in your mouth, Pittsburgh. Don't put your freaking foot in your mouth. Because you know what happened in Tennessee? Tennessee did the same exact thing. Tennessee underestimated their opponent. They didn't think Baker Mayfield would beat them. They said, all we got to do is just load the box, let Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt beat us, and then or stop Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt from beating us, and we'll win the game. Well, keep on thinking that. Keep on thinking that, America. Watch what happens.
True.
Dude, it's gonna be real funny it'll be real funny if Baker Mayfield have a playoff win before Lamar Jackson.
You know what? If Baker Mayfield gets a playoff win before the Bengals in my entire lifetime, I'll be pretty pissed. But also, I won't be pissed because it means the Steelers lost. So fuck the Steelers. But still, you know.
We'll see what happens.
I already watched Carson
I
Palmer
think
do
the
it,
Ravens.
so you can't really hurt me any more than that.
I think the Ravens are going to beat the. We'll get to that later.
So, I found some interesting information actually about the Browns in playoff games. You know who the Browns played the last time they were in the playoffs?
2001. It was against Steelers. Kelly Hawk. 2002 it was against Steelers.
Yeah, technically 2003.
Yeah, Kelly Hawkman had like 400 yards that game, and they still lost. Steelers came back. We talked about it on episode. We talked about it on our third episode of the podcast.
Yeah, but basically what happened in that game was the Browns were actually winning 27-17 in the beginning of the fourth quarter. Like they had that game like wrapped up basically. And then they let the Steelers, they let Tommy Maddox drop 22 points, 15 of which were unanswered in the fourth quarter.
No.
The Browns did manage to put together a
good.
nice little drive at the end of the game, and they finished in field goal range, actually. Like Kelly Holcomb threw a pass to Andre King on the final play of the game. It was like a 16-yard catch from the 45. So if I'm doing my math on that, what does that put you at, like the 31?
Yeah.
No, that's not right. Why can't I do math? 29. That puts you on the 29. Even kickers in 2002, that should be pretty much a chip shot, right? So you're on the 29-yard line, and you got an opportunity to tie the game up and send it to overtime, right? Time runs out. They had 7 seconds left, and like I said, Andre King managed to get the ball to the 29-yard line, but it didn't matter because he took too long to do it, and the time ran out.
Yeah, I remember that. I think Baker Mayfield's about to have a fucking game. I think Baker Mayfield's about to have a signature game on Sunday.
I don't know about that.
Look at his primetime stats. He doesn't falter. He doesn't
the full strength Steelers defense. I'm not saying the Browns can't win. I'm saying I don't know if it's going to come on a like Baker Mayfield signature game. I think it's going to it's probably going to have to be like the Browns keeping the Steelers. It's probably going to have, if the Browns are going to win, it's probably going to have to be a low scoring type game. And the Browns are probably going to have to control most of the game with their running game.
I think they got out.
Murphy.
I think they're going to have to outshoot them though, because I think Jarvis. Because look, Jarvis, man, I think Jarvis and Baker going to have a good game, big game. I think it's going to be Jarvis. I think it's going to be a Jarvis Baker game. I think Nick Chubb obviously going to do his thing. But I don't know, man. I'm just looking at these. Like anytime it's prime time, it's always Jarvis and Baker. Always Jarvis and Baker.
Is Joe Hayden playing?
I don't know yet. I haven't come out with that. By the way, the Browns players that are expected to be active are on the COVID list are Denzel Ward, Michael Smith, and Harrison Bryant. I said that Kevin Johnson. I'm gonna keep speaking. I said that Kevin Johnson was a possible said Kevin Johnson was a possible person who could be on the. I said Kevin Johnson could possibly be a player who might come back, but it doesn't seem like Kevin Johnson's going to be able to come back. Kevin Johnson is still dealing with the COVID issues. Also, here goes another person. Excuse me, that's worth mentioning. Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett, he's been fighting COVID. He's been coming back from COVID. He's been on a breathing machine, all that great stuff. And he said come out today that he's breathing even better and he's doing a better job. So I think yeah. I'm actually really excited about this game. I think as we get closer to the game, they're going to get pumped. Well, I think the Browns are going to be okay.
I hope so. That's all I got to say.
We'll be all right.
But let's go ahead and move on to the state of the AFC North. I mean, really, we just talked about the Steelers. The main thing from the Steelers' perspective here is they've, they didn't do too bad against the Browns. But other than that, other than the second half of the Colts game, they just have not looked good lately. The last 4 weeks, they got themselves on like a 3-game losing streak, and then they managed to beat the Colts, but just barely at the very end. And then they played pretty well against the Browns, and they lost, but they were also resting a lot of their starters, so it's just kind of like, how much stock can you really take into that particular game? I mean, you can definitely say the Browns did what they had to do, but I'm saying from the Steelers' perspective, how much stock can you really take into that game? Because they weren't really playing anybody.
Another thing about this game, by the way, I know we kind of talk about the game a lot, is that the Steelers have a lot more pressure going to this game than the Browns did. Sunday's game, the Browns had all the pressure in the world because the Browns were trying to be the first team to make the playoffs, and we don't know how long, right?
Yeah.
Now on Sunday, the Steelers going to have the pressure. Now all the pressure shifts to Pittsburgh, and we're going to see how
like I said, from my perspective, it's like the Browns. There's no pressure to really I mean, obviously you want to win, but if you don't win, I don't feel like there's a lot of pressure in that. Because it's like, hey, you finally made the playoffs. Next year, it'll be like, oh, y'all better go win. You better win. But I feel like this year, just the fact that you made the playoffs is a win right there. This is already a successful season.
Yeah, I want to win Sunday. I'm not taking more victories. I'm not taking victory laps for.
But I'm agreeing with you as far as levels of pressure. I think the Steelers have a lot more pressure because they had so many expectations and
so many. Yeah, I think the pressure on the Browns are just playing with house money, man. And the Steelers keep, the coach Mike Tomlin was asked about the Browns staff and Browns players getting COVID and stuff, and his response was just simply, I don't care, kind of like that. And Steelers been very nonchalant about it. And they've been very cutthroat about it. And I understand, it's none of your business in a way. But I wouldn't say you don't gotta show sympathy because we're not asking for that, but or empathy. You don't gotta show empathy, but just recognize the situation. Be I don't know, it just kind of feels like they're just oh yeah, F them anyway, who cares? They got COVID, life goes on, it don't matter to them. It's kind of like they're just ignoring a really bad situation that's happening to the Browns, and they're just like, oh yeah, who cares? We're gonna whoop them anyway. So it just feels like they're trying to, I don't know.
It's fair.
I don't know. Fuck the Steelers.
No, yeah, the Steelers are trash. They've always been trash. They'll always be trash, and they basically what they try to do is they try to get in your heads, and once they get in your heads, then you collapse in on yourself, and they get to walk right through with the win when they didn't actually really have to do any work. All they did was they got in your heads and you beat yourself. And that's how the Steelers beat you.
I got visions now. I got permissions of the Titans game. Like, never mind. I just I really think we're gonna win Sunday.
We will we'll see what happens there. But to finish up the state of the AFC North, we got to talk about the Ravens, who we haven't really talked much about at all so far. I think we briefly mentioned them earlier, but they're playing the Tennessee Titans this week. It's a rematch. Huh?
I said, uh-oh.
Right. Well, it's a rematch of the team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year. That was kind of really the beginning of all this talk about, like, is Lamar really actually as good as people think he is? Because, like, when you lose in the playoffs the first time, it's kind of like, okay, it's your first time. Lamar will come back and get him next time. Just, you're building towards something better. But after all that hype you generated last year, and then to come in and, like, fall flat against a Titans team that went 9-7, it was just kind of like, I don't know about these Ravens, man. I don't know about this Lamar Jackson guy. And so you've got this time is going to be in the wild card round, and because of the season that y'all have kind of been having, they've been kind of coming on a little bit better lately. But the Ravens got to put up something here. It's pretty much put up or shut up time. If you guys are a real team, you got to beat the Titans. This isn't like the Browns. I think the Ravens are under, of all the AFC North teams that are in the playoffs right now, I think the Ravens are the ones under the most pressure to get a win right now, because this is really about, because, like, I think the Steelers are about to go into a rebuild no matter what they do. Even if they win, they've gotten so old and broken down, and they got so many issues going on. I think they're going to be putting together maybe not a full-scale rebuild, but they got some sort of rebuild coming their way regardless. The Ravens, on the other hand, are trying to prove that their current system right now is something to pay attention to for, like, the next 10, 15 years. And if they lose again in the first round of the playoffs, especially after some of the struggles they've had this year, I don't know. That question mark just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
I mean, unless the Steelers go out and get, like, Deshaun Watson or something.
Even then, I don't think the Steelers would do that.
That would suck, by the way. That would absolutely suck.
It's not just Deshaun. It's not just Ben Roethlisberger that they're going to have to rebuild. It's not just the quarterback position. It's like the entire offense is just kind of a clusterfuck right now. I mean, like, ever since Le'Veon Bell left, it's like James Conner kind of looked pretty good at first, and ever since then, he's just been their run game has been a nightmare. Their wide receivers at best are Juju Smith-Schuster, and even he's not really, like, all that all the time. I mean, sometimes he's really good, but sometimes he disappears. Like, and they're building a pretty good defense there, but it's outside of a couple specific players, they got a lot of old guys on that offense or on that defense too. So I don't know. I think the Steelers have some pretty important key pieces. So that's why I say I don't know if they're going to completely rebuild, but I definitely think that once Roethlisberger goes, then that whole team is going to kind of have to reinvent itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Ravens, I think, are proving that they don't. Are the big pressure with the Ravens right now? I think the fact that they're wanting to prove that they don't need to go through another rebuild.
Yeah. 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 I think the Ravens are going to be okay. I think the Ravens are going to be okay. I don't think the Ravens are going to end up rebuilding for another 3 years.
I don't know about if they're going to rebuild for that long, but I mean, the Ravens don't typically stay down and out for very long. But I don't think they're going to have to. A lot of question marks are going to be raised if they don't win this game.
That's why I don't think that they're going to necessarily. Well, let me not tip my hand twice in one show.
You did earlier, I think.
Yeah, I did. I don't necessarily think they're going to lose this game. I think that I think that this is Lamar Jackson's third year. Keep in mind, out of that quarterback draft class, it's the first year that we have 3 of the quarterbacks in that draft class in the playoffs. It takes time. It takes time. Kyler Murray still hasn't even made the playoff yet. Brandon Allen's only going to play in his second playoff game. I think to label somebody who only Josh Allen only played in 2 playoff games, or 1 playoff game.
You keep doing that.
I think to label somebody not a playoff quarterback when they play 2 games in the first two years of the career, I think that's a gross miscalculation. I think that I think Lamar Jackson I don't want to beat up on him yet. I think the book is still out on him. I don't want to necessarily beat up on him. And I think that the Ravens are going to win this game. I just think they're a better team than Titans.
Well, they were supposedly the better team than Titans last year too.
Oh yeah, but
far better team actually. They were supposed to.
Keep in mind though. You had a team. Experience. I'm a sucker for experience. This goes against my argument for the Browns, but I'm a sucker for experience. And you're talking about Ravens team that last year one thing that the Titans did last year, a great job of. They loved going to teams who had all the hype. Like they did a great job of creeping up on teams that had a lot of hype. The Ravens don't got hype this year, man. There is no hype for the Ravens this year. So right now they're playing the underdogs. This is a position they never played in. And I always think
that's not true.
Mentality.
They're favored in this game.
Are they really?
Yeah. Are
they really? They really are favored this game.
Well, they've also been playing a lot better the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I guess Vegas is thinking the same thing I'm thinking. I think the Ravens got this game. I just don't think you can beat Lamar Jackson that many times. I just think you just gonna get away with it.
We will talk about that more in the predictions episode that we're going to record here pretty soon. But anyway, I think that's about all we really need to say about the topics that we're discussing in this week's in today's episode of the Battle of Ohio podcast. Appreciate you guys listening. Go ahead and if you want to hear more stuff about this, you want to get notified. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It would really help us out. It also makes me and Thomas. It's nice to feel like there's people out there listening, and when people subscribe to the channel, it always makes us feel good. Makes us feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
If you're watching this, you are not a lame.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Only the non-lames can hear that. Because
for those who do follow the podcast, though, or anybody really, if you like what you heard here, but you just you desperately want more, you can always go follow me at Kyle Phelps 92 on Twitter and at facebook.com/thephelps. Or you can follow Thomas at T_star94 on Twitter and Instagram, and he's got a YouTube channel called Blowdown Page. If you want more stuff from either of us, more thoughts, more opinions, more content, go find us in those places. After this episode, there should be a predictions episode up, so go watch that. It'll be the playoffs predictions where we reset the yeah.
The most used.
Yeah, for some reason, despite the fact that I didn't do so well in the predictions this year, I made the playoffs, but that's mostly just because there's 2 people anyway. Gonna basically reset things and see who can come up with a better set of playoff predictions, and maybe I'll do better this time around. Who knows? But anyway, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you next time. I'll leave y'all with the Who Dey.
Go Browns. Beat the Steelers, goddammit.